welcome to DadAwesome.
Thank you very much, Jeff. So inspired to be here. Love this ministry.
Plumb line. I was like, what is a plumb line? And I kind of had an idea with a string and a weight, but what is a plumb line?
Yeah. Plumb line's an ancient tool. You've rightly said it's a weight that hangs on a string, and it measures alignment. You know, if we want to be sure the foundation of this building we're going to build is true and it's going to be strong enough to support, what we build, a plumb line is significant. So that's what we're trying to do with hearts and souls and equipping dads.
So on the home front, just to make it real personal for a moment, a plumb line for you as a dad, for you in your marriage, with your kids, and just fly over so our listeners know. So you got a 19-year-old son, 17-year-old son, and 14-year-old daughter. Is that still the right age? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the window of fatherhood. If I was chatting with your family, your wife and 3 kids about like, what is a plumb line? What are the things that are true alignments that you're going for and you're coming back to, like, let's check in and make sure we're still going in the same direction and things haven't shifted. Foundational direction. What would that mean, the plumb line on the home front?
Yeah, so the metaphor shifts a little bit, but the necessary components to be sure that we're aligned and that foundation is true for me is the Shema. Jesus was asked 3 times, Matthew 22, Mark 12, and Luke chapter 10, what is the greatest commandment in the law? And in all 3 times he affirmed this ancient Jewish prayer, came out of Deuteronomy originally, called the Shema, which is just love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And he said there's nothing more important than that. Or even more profoundly in Matthew 22, all the law and all the commandments hang on that, or it's all built on that. Like, all right, this is the foundation. This is what it's about. Well, I started to form years ago, Jeff, what I now call our spiritual anatomy. And the idea is simple. Just like the physical body has systems, and our health or our flourishing has something to do with how functional and healthy those systems are. Well, the spiritual anatomy has systems too. We have these 4, a heart system, a soul system, a mind system, and a strength system. And so for me, what real alignment looks like, or foundational stability looks like, is I've got to be working as a dad and as a man to ensure that all 4 of those aspects of my spiritual makeup are attached, because in worst case scenarios, they can be detached, but secondly, nourished, because they can be connected but not healthy. They could be over-functioning or under-functioning or asleep entirely or something. But then third, this word integrated. How do I ensure that each of these 4 parts of me are accessible and able to be applied within the relationship or within the problem-solving process or within the entrepreneurial pursuit, or in this case, for this podcast, within my fathering? And so alignment for me and for my family, and I do teach my kids and raise my kids around this. In fact, I'm planning right now to have another intentional conversation with all 3 of my children where I draw these 4 parts. There's a way that I draw it with circles that are interlapping, and the true self emerges from the center of these 4 integrated parts. But I'll go through it and I'll ask them, of these 4, rate them. Which one's doing really well right now and is the strongest, the most connected, the healthiest, and which one's kind of atrophied or kind of lagging behind. And we'll have conversations about how to be sure that we're harmonizing and intentionally growing these 4 parts so that we've got that foundation that's really aligned and can support the life that we're going to build.
Yes. Okay, so you call it the spiritual anatomy, the 4 systems: heart, soul, mind, strength. Let's flip the question right to you right now, Jake. Which one would you say is a flourishing, the strongest, and which one are you like, nope, I've got some more attention to this one?
Yeah, I love your question, because in my research, what I've come to discover is that most of us are living dominantly from one of those 4 systems, okay? And then that dominant system selects one of the 3 that are left as a sidekick, like recruits it to be a part of the operational procedure of life, or whatever it is. So, and I'm actually developing an assessment that'll actually help people understand, like, of these 4 archetypes. So maybe we should start there. Like, what are these 4 things definitively? These 4 parts definitively, and naming kind of the personified archetypes of each of those 4 parts can help bring definition. So the heart part of us I call the loving companion who is alive in us. The soul part of us is the visionary guide aspect of our makeup. The mind is the strategic overseer. Okay. And then the strength is the driven warrior part of us.
Okay.
So from those 4 archetypes, if it's true that all of us have one that's dominant and then a second as a sidekick, that means there are 12 possible types.
Yep.
12 possible modus operandi that I can have imprinted on me or that I've selected as my strategy to survive and feel safe and experience meaning in the world. So my type, I'm soul dominant. So visionary guide dominant, spend a lot of time dreaming, ideating, inventing, futurizing, problem solving, strategizing, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I'm soul dominant. And then after I dream it, I run over into my strength, that driven warrior part, and I just start to build it. Okay. So dreaming and doing and dreaming and doing and ideating and achieving, and like that's how I tend to live my life. That type is called the visionary warrior.
Okay.
So that's me. I'm soul dominant with this strength second. My mind is very suppressed. I do not like meetings, tactical meetings. I got solid 20 minutes and less if there's spreadsheets involved. Knock it down to 10. It's just like when we're really analyzing or structuring or systematizing, or we're in the detail, I am really weak in that area. That part of my makeup needs a lot of work. And then my heart has really been asleep for a long time. That loving companion part of me, I'm rarely aware of what feelings are true inside of me, what needs that I personally have that are connected to those feelings. I certainly don't spend a lot of prioritized energy trying to ensure my needs are going to get met in a healthy way. And the rule of that heart part of us, unfortunately, is whatever I do to me, I'm going to do to you. Whatever I do to me, I'm going to do to my kids. And so if I'm ignoring, or I've got a blind eye, or I'm checked out on what I'm feeling and what I need, I'm going to have a blind eye and be checked out on what my kids need. If I'm telling myself to suck it up, tough it out, pull myself up by my bootstraps, be a man, something, that's exactly what I'm going to do to my kids. Okay. But if I'm curious and asking myself, like, well, what am I feeling? And what do I need? And how do I ensure that need? I'll do that for my kids. So, yeah.
So this is so helpful. By the way, how long are we going to have to wait for this assessment? How soon? Because I need this. I need this.
Yeah, we've actually got a guy, I'm so excited about this, who's done a lot of plumb line work with me, and he's finishing up his degree in psychology. Okay. And he's going to come in and do an internship with us in the fall. And part of his specialty for his psychological thing was to develop these instruments to test that underneath the surface of the skin stuff. So I've got this book I hope to have out at the beginning of next year, part of which will have this assessment that he's going to help us develop and really try to serve guys to know what's your baseline, where are you starting from?
Yeah. Well, that just means we'll have you back for round 2 as that launches.
Awesome.
So
I'd love that.
That's great. So I guess my question, I didn't quite realize this, but it's kind of who God has made us to be and our strengths. My question of like, well, what's going well and what are you kind of having focus on to work on? Is there also a chapter though, like the conversation with your kids on like, hey, this chapter headed into the fall with these 4 systems, is there also, we look at it in that way of like, what areas do we need to put more attention to, or is it not that kind of a framework? Yeah, no, I think, unlike many personality assessments or typing systems, often the goal can be one of 2 things. It can be like, don't worry about your weaknesses, just focus on your strengths, is one approach that a lot of these make. Or another one is, just focus on becoming the healthiest version of your type. That's just who you are. And some of the deconstructing work I have to do with men and women that I work with is I have to help people understand that these personality assessments and these typing systems cannot tell you who you are. They actually don't reveal your God design. All they reveal is who you had to become. So I wasn't born with these 4 letters or one of these 9 types or these 2 letters on, this disc profile, whatever it is. I wasn't born like that. Those are the predictable patterns of thinking and behaving that I took on to feel safe or to experience meaning in the world. They are learned patterns. And so I learned to overemphasize and maybe overuse some and to underemphasize and to kind of bury others. I actually believe God's design for us is the integration of these 4 parts of our makeup. We are made to bring all of them to health, to maturity, to growth,
Some of them are more intuitive to us than others because of our life experiences and these learned patterns. But ultimately, the call, I think, is to integrate the 4 parts. And as Christians especially, I think this is what Jesus demonstrated. Like, Jesus didn't have predictable patterns of thinking and behaving. He was very confusing if you look at his life, because it's like, think about how those assessments work. That is going to give us our type or something. It's like, well, how do you tend to act in this situation? How do you tend to respond when this thing happens? How do you tend to think about this? What are your preferences with these things? And we have those answers because we are predictable. But Jesus would heal a guy this week and go, don't tell anybody. This is between you and me, And then he'd heal a guy next week and he'd say, go tell your whole town what I've done for you here today. In one scene with oppressive religious leaders, he would point at them and say, you're a pit of vipers and you're whitewashed tombs. And then next week, he doesn't say anything. He stays silent and he writes in the dirt with his finger. And it's like, there's all these examples, right? There are times where the crowds would come to him and he would push out on a boat and he would generously and graciously give them his time. He would teach them. And there are other times his disciples would say, there's a whole bunch of people coming. And he'd go, let's walk to the other side of the lake quick. Let's get out of here. And it's like, who is this guy? One woman, he says, you're not worthy of the scraps that fall from my table. And then he spends hours with a outcast woman at a well. It's like, what is going on here? Jesus had these 4 aspects of his makeup attached, nourished, and integrated. And he knew which one needed to step forward and take the lead in this conversation or facing that challenge. When you think about the perfection of Christ, not just as a moral idea, like he just didn't sin or something, which is certainly true. His perfection is profound morally. But when you extend it past that and you think he always had the right emotional energy, he always had the right facial expression or nonverbal communication, like how amazing is the perfection of Christ? And it all extends back to the integration of these 4 parts. So that is the goal for me, for disciples. That's the goal for me, for dads, is we've got to be working. Like, we don't just settle, I'm just the soul to strength guy. I'm just going to be that. Like, no, I've got to work to bring more heart into my fathering. I've got to work to bring more strategic oversight, mind into my fathering. Those are less intuitive for me, but to be the kind of holistic and full man that God has made me and called me to be for my kids, for my family, I've got to be working to integrate all 4 of these parts.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thanks for painting another kind of brush on that. That's really helpful. I want to go back in time to a sweet conversation with you and your daughter. But before we hit that one, I'd love to know, just present day, what is sparking joy in your heart? Like, is it, and it could be related to fatherhood, but it doesn't have to be. I'm just curious, what's sparking joy these days?
Yeah. What's sparking joy? See, I love this question because it's going to reveal my own deficiency. That's a heart question. And I've already admitted and confessed that I'm a soul to strength guy. My heart is not something, I have to work really hard to actually be aware of what's happening in my heart. So I'll say this, my oldest son is one of the most inspiring people in my life. He's on the autism spectrum. He's 19 years old now. I watch him wake up every day and try to make sense of a world that doesn't make sense to him, and then step into it courageously and face it courageously. And he challenges all of my instincts as a father, because it's not your typical way to be with somebody, father somebody, guide somebody, And so he has been a key part of my own formation as a man, like shaping me and bringing more heart into play. So I'll simply answer your question and say, watching him courageously show up to his life and having the privilege to kind of walk that and bring some guidance to it, but more just observe the Spirit guide him and watch him push through obstacle and have breakthroughs. You're talking about a kid who was a little hesitant to get his driver's license, and I think he didn't want to hurt people, and wasn't certain about that. And 18 years old, we let him get through high school, graduated. 18 years old, he goes and he gets this driver's license. Going from I just really don't want to do this, I'll just public transportation, whatever, to go from that to every day now he drives in Nashville rush hour up to the city and home in rush hour to go up to his trade school where he's studying machine tool engineering. What breakthroughs, because he was courageously willing to push through his discomforts and to try. And so I'd say that's what's sparking the most joy for me right now. Yeah.
Thank you. Before I read what your daughter whispered to you before bed, tell me, which daughter was it, your older or your younger daughter? And
so
how
I've got
long
two sons, 19 and 17, and then just one daughter who's 14.
14.
And so
how long ago was this conversation?
This was a little more than 10 years ago. Okay. She's 14 now, and she was 4 years old at the time.
Okay, my youngest is 4, my youngest of my 4 daughters. So I know that
you
chapter.
Got the image.
Yeah, so here's the words at bedtime that she whispered to you. And this ties back to that heart conversation as well. She said this to you: "Hey, Dad, if I could line up all the dads in the world and I could pick a nice one or you, I'd still pick you." Can you tell us a little bit about what surrounded that and what that led to?
Yeah, so here's the hard thing about that is I wasn't some checked out deadbeat dad when she whispered that to me. I was very devoted as a father. I was very committed. I was very engaged. I was the guy that coached their sports teams, helped with homework. And part of my philosophy of fathering was a good dad's going to put that little girl on his shoulders and walk her up those stairs and read her a bedtime story and turn off those lights and lie with her till she falls asleep. I don't care how hard my day was. That's what a dad is in my visionary guide soul. And I'll find the strength to pull that off no matter how long my day was, right? So here I am, very devoted, very committed. That particular night, though, lying with her while she fell asleep, her little voice emerges, and sure enough, she gives me this truth bomb that was truly an expression of her unconditional love for me. Because a 4-year-old does not have a passive-aggressive bone in their body. It's like that she was genuinely saying, "Dad, here's how much I love you," And so I just kind of thought when she gave that, she's 4, maybe she's having trouble. Like, I should probably give her a chance to backpedal out of that, right? I should probably give her a chance to reframe that. So I just said something like, "Oh, honey, is Daddy not very nice?" And she said, "Not really." She didn't backpedal at all. She was like, "Not really, but I'd still choose you, And the hard truth for me, Jeff, at the moment, 10 years ago, was without exaggerating, I genuinely believe she may have been the only human being in my life that could have given me that kind of feedback, like kind of, here's what it's like to be with you, that wouldn't have caused me to become kind of defensive or even more probable, dismissive. Would have been more my style. Like, that's your opinion or something. Like, "Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way," or something like that. But I could not just kind of blow off the sentiments of my own sweet little girl. And that was the moment that caused me to look long and hard in the mirror and just ask the question, what the heck is wrong with me? Like, I grew up in the church. I studied ministry formally, and I've been I was a pastor for 21 years before I started doing this. It's like, shouldn't I be the one with the answers? Shouldn't I be the one teaching everybody else how to live? Shouldn't I be the one experiencing inside of me the fruit of the Spirit, love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faith? And if I'm honest, I was going through that list, very little of that list did I experience with any kind of frequency, consistency, like love. Don't feel very loved by others, respected or admired or whatever, maybe, but like loved, I certainly don't feel a lot of love for others. People kind of tended to annoy me. On down the list, you asked earlier about joy. Fleeting, circumstantial happiness here and there, maybe. Joy, real joy, not really. Peace, anxious all the time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how could this be? And that was the answer that I had to pursue.
So I'd love to kind of double click on these 2 D words, dads being defensive, dads being dismissive.
Brutal.
I know when you said those 2, like, that was a response to anyone else, but maybe your 4-year-old was able to break through with her sweetness. My 6-year-old pulled me aside maybe a month ago after we were packing up 2 days in a row for summer camp. She's like, "Dad, you're a lot more calm today than you were yesterday." And truly, it's the same exact thing. Like, her little sweetness gave me the benefit of the doubt. Instead of saying, "You were horrible yesterday, you were bossy and rigid and angry and sharp with us," she said, "You're a lot more calm today." So this defensiveness rises up very normal within me, and dismissive of like, it's not that big a deal. Like, get over it. Like, the dismissive. Would you coach me for a moment on these two areas of defensiveness and being dismissive.
Yes, we are talking about that heart part of the spiritual anatomy when we have this conversation and consider this question. And so one of the things that's true about that part of us is the heart part of us is where feelings live. And I don't know about you, but it's typical in our culture, in our society, to suppress. We're taught to suppress or to dismiss, actually, this part of us. Many of us, when we were having big feelings as a kid, for example, were probably sent to our room and not allowed to come out until what?
Where you calm down.
That's right. That's right. Like have a calm conversation, or you stop crying, or you can be more reasonable or something. And the subtle, perhaps unintended message that we all got as little boys and little girls was, what's going to qualify you to rejoin the family? What's going to qualify you to be in the relationship is you can't be having. So we learn to dismiss ourselves, those feelings very, very young. And again, we do to others what we do to ourselves. So if I'm dismissing my own feelings, my own needs, I am going to dismiss yours and instead tell you to suck it up, tough it out, whatever it is. So that's what's going on there. To fix it, interestingly enough, it's truly this principle in the Shema also of love your neighbor as yourself. What I do to me, I'm going to do to you. So in order to fix that punitive kind of defensive or dismissive response to my kids, the fix is I actually have to start tuning an ear, an attentive and a curious. That's on your website. That's a big value for you guys.
That's it.
A curious ear to myself when something's stirring in me, when I'm feeling frustrated, when I'm feeling thin, when I'm irritated, when I'm, whatever it is. I have to turn that curious attention into my own heart and ask myself, where am I at? Like, what's going on inside of me? What feelings are true in my chest? I don't get to choose what feelings I have. I only choose what I do with them. So honor them or dismiss them. And if I start to honor them instead of dismissing them, like if I stop sucking it up and powering through myself, and I start to actually go, what is that? Oh, I'm afraid. I told my kid to turn off his video games, 30 minutes ago, and he's still playing them with Cheeto fingers. And what do? I project into his future. He's 36 years old, sitting in his apartment 3 hours late for work, playing video games with Cheeto fingers. And so I start to, engage him at this level of my unfelt, unnamed fear. And fear, when it's dishonored in me, when I'm dismissing or suppressing it, it doesn't go away. It devolves into anxiety and control. Now I'm going to try to control his life and motivate him externally, which is one of the most damaging things we can do to our kids. They have to find their internal motivation. And I start putting these hard lines in place and punitive responses when he doesn't do what I want and all these types of things. And it's incredibly destructive, right? So, yeah.
Like the idea of an area of my life being malnourished. I think this is the way you described it, is like, like actually it's there. Like I can grow this. I can bring more and God's heart is that I would. And the area actually isn't my action to my little girls or my wife. The area is to myself. The upstream, right, you're saying, is understand that emotion's okay. It's okay. I have a little emotions wheel, a feelings wheel, so I can help to put my finger on it. But I have a lot of work to do in this area. So Jake, we're hitting topics that I know I have a lot of work to do because it's easier to skip working on myself and understanding and shelve that and try to show up. The short term is to show up for my girls, not for myself, and to skip the first step of loving myself.
Mm-hmm. There's no doubt, and again, we're trained from the time we're very, very young to do that. In the classroom, in sports, even at church, it's like we get all this theology quoted to us, like we get Philippians quoted to us a lot. Jesus, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, made himself nothing. He made himself nothing, taking the nature of servant, being found in appearance as a man, humbled himself, obedience to death, even death on the cross. Go and do likewise, and it's kind of like we get this idea that I'm just supposed to dismiss myself, power through things, tough stuff out. And we take the passion of Christ, like the ultimate vision and purpose of his life to go to the cross for our sins, and we try to apply it to every mundane, minuscule moment of our life, and that's not the point of it. Jesus knew what he was feeling, and he knew how to get his needs met in a healthy way. He would go missing and they would be ticked. He'd show back up. He'd stumble back in like in a bathrobe, missing a shoe with a cigarette dangling from his lip. Not really. That's probably sacrilegious. Sorry. He'd show back up rejuvenated, right?
Yeah.
And they would go, they confront him. Where you been? We've been looking for you. And Jesus' response is, oh, my bad. I'm supposed to be accessible 24 hours. I'll be sure you got my cell phone number next time so you can contact me if you need. Like, he just goes, I've been with my Father. Yeah. Like, I got bread you don't know about. They call him to come and heal Lazarus. Like, Lazarus is sick. Come right away. 4 days later. He wasn't 4 days away. That was a decision. Like, 4 days later. And they shame him. Like, God, if you had been here. If you'd only been here, and he cries and raises it, but he knew his mother and his brothers come to get him and take him home. And they're like, send him out here. We want to talk to him. He doesn't even go to see them. He says to the messenger, go tell them I'm with my mother and I'm with my brothers. Can you imagine? Like, say that to your own mother. He knew what he was feeling. He knew how to ask for what he needed. Best example is in the garden. He's afraid. And he goes to his friends and he says, I need you guys. Watch and pray with me. It was precisely his attunement with himself, what he was feeling and the needs that were connected to those feelings, and taking all of that seriously that allowed him to love others so well.